It's really good for it's really good for like bronchial infections, things of that sort.
Okay, and then there is a statement to keep it in a cool, dark place.
Yes.
Well, right now in my house, it's only a fridge.
Yes.
That's cool and dark.
Yes.
So fridge is okay.
Fridge is okay, yeah.
Right.
And we will get into all of that as well.
Okay.
But yeah, you can totally keep it in the fridge. And you can also just keep it in like a cabinet. So that's, that's fine too.
Yeah, when it cools down. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
A question about with the alcohol. I know I've been learning about placenta encapsulation and tinctures made from placenta, and the person I was learning from uses vodka. Have you ever seen somebody use vinegar, apple cider vinegar with placenta?
I don't know about that. I would say I would talk to Kim Talachi. She's like our placenta expert around here, and she would probably have a better. Yeah.
So I know the alcohol does something in terms of like shelf life. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kathleen is talking about using placenta medicine. So after the birth of the baby, sometimes folks choose to dehydrate their placentas, and then they encapsulate it, or they put it into a tincture to take it into their bodies, and that helps a lot of times with postpartum depression, postpartum recovery. I don't know about that. That's an interesting thought.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat says, why is it that honey is toxic to infants?
Honey can cause botulism. So it has a enzyme in it, bacterial enzyme that can cause botulism in infants under the age of 1, just because they're not able to digest that. Yeah. Are there any other questions in the chat?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. How long does apple cider vinegar last?
When we make this remedy together, this is shelf stable for about 6 months. So, yeah. So, and I would say the same for apple cider vinegar, like 6 months, maybe a year, but that feels like a little pushing it to me. So if you've had something in your shelves or your cabinets for a good long time, maybe get something fresh to make your remedies with. Yeah. What are the other questions?
That's it.
Oh, cool. Okay. So, let's talk about the plants.
This is sad for the moment.
We have different plants that we're going to use today. And again, this is not an exhaustive list that's in your list here. And these herbs I picked specifically. When I was asked to do this workshop, I was thinking a lot about like, what do folks need right now? And I thought, because of the wildfires that were happening, they were affecting so many people I knew and so many communities. It made me think just about the grief and the loss that people were having at the loss of the forests, the loss of people's homes, the impact it had on people's lives. And then I also was thinking a lot about COVID, right? And so many of us have had the impacts of COVID affect us personally or within our immediate families. And then just worldwide, there's just such deep grief around all of this that I thought today we'll make a remedy for that. Because it's not often, I think, that we tend to want to talk about our grief or even just like love it up a little bit, right? So all of these plants you could make an oxymel with each one of these individually, but they work really great when you make it together. So we are going to talk today about milky oat tops, chamomile, lemon balm, roses, motherwort, dandelion root, and dandelion leaf. And actually, I had a little experiment that I want to do. Is it possible if you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Pick 9 soon. And is it possible to put a little bit of this in the glass? I want people just to taste it. Okay. So while Chess is going to get that for us, I want us to just taste it. Has anybody ever tasted apple cider vinegar? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay. even just thinking about it, I can feel, you know, that little feeling that happens under your cheeks. That feeling is like salivatory response, and it definitely helps to like improve the digestion. That's part of like why I love it so much. So we're going to taste that, and then we're going to mix them all up together, and then you can taste your own individual oxymel as well. So let's talk first about milky oat tops. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to pass them around. I would love for you to, if like, take one or two, just feel it, smell it. Some of these you can taste. These ones get a little hard, but if you're feeling adventurous, you can stick it in your mouth and chew it up and just kind of feel it. I really believe strongly in knowing your plants and all the different ways that you can take them in. So these are milky oat tops, which are essentially from the oat plant. So when you make oatmeal, it's coming from these seed pods, and they have sort of a different way of processing them to make them into oatmeal. Let's see. Oh, cool. Okay. So yeah, if you can, just take a little taste of the apple cider vinegar and just notice how it feels in your body and like in your mouth. So for those of you who are on screen, let's see, I'm going to turn this down for just a second, so that you can see what the milky oat tops look like. So these are individual seed pods. Ideally, you want to use milky oats when they're fresh. So you're taking them right off the plant to use them for a tincture or to use them for an oxymel, but you can also use them when they are dry. So just to note that as well, they're just not quite as strong. When they're fresh, the reason why they're called milky oats is because you can squeeze them like this, and they exude a milky kind of latex substance. And that latex substance, that's like the medicine in it that makes it nice and strong. So as you can see, I'm squeezing these, nothing's happening, they're kind of hard. So milky oats are one of my very favorite plants. They are restorative and grounding. They're so good for stress, and they're so good for adrenal fatigue. So if you feel like you've been going and going and going and going through this whole COVID pandemic and you haven't had a moment to stop, this plant might be one of your plants. It's good for anxiety and depression. Milky oats kind of work over time, so they're a tonic, and tonics are plants that work with your system, but you have to kind of take them consistently for a little bit before they have that really strong effect. Milky oats are really good if you feel like you've been pushed and pushed and pushed to your limits. So for those of you who have burnout, if you're working jobs where you don't get a break, if you're a parent and you don't get to rest, if you're feeling out of sorts, or you feel like no matter how much sleep you get, you just don't get enough sleep and you're always tired, milky oats might be for you. Milky oats also have been known to treat addiction. And so this is something I think a lot about addiction, and I think a lot about why our society has such a strong prevalence of addiction. And, you know, I love the work of Gabor Mate, who's a psychotherapist, and he really traces the roots of addiction back to trauma. And I think about, there's a peacock outside. It's like, I want to come learn. I think about the, you know, for so many of our communities, we have deep roots of having had traumatic experiences. And, you know, when you've had long-term trauma, it does all sorts to your body. It makes you tired. It makes you exhausted. It makes you feel like you're pushed to your limits. Yeah, all of those things that milky oats kind of takes care of, right? And so when so that's milky oats. You can take milky oats as a tea as well. So if you don't want to do it as an oxymel, you can take it every single night and just drink your tea right before bed. It can help you to sleep deeper. And this is great across the board. So babies, children, pregnant folks, adults, elders, everyone can take milky oats. When you have the plant, it's essentially like a grass, right? So you have your long stem and then it has little seed heads that come out of the top. And so we're pulling the seed heads off, and that's what this is. But the stem itself, that's called oat straw. And oat straw is also very medicinal. So that if you had a fresh plant, you would just kind of chop it up and let it dry, or you could use it fresh and you can make your tea or your tinctures or your oxymels with that. So that is milky oats. And what I'll say for us here in person, and if you're at home and you're online, if you're planning to make remedies with us, you want to make sure that you have a clean jar. And if you have your herbs with you, I know some of you wanted to try this at home, you would just take your herbs as we're talking and we can add them to our jar. So whoever has the milky oats, we could just put a few teaspoons of milky oats into your jar. And so think about this, because as I'm talking, you might be like, this plant is totally for me. Or you can be like, that plant doesn't really feel like it vibes with me. And so you don't need to use that plant. So just think about this. This should be kind of created specifically for you. All right. So the next plant, just how long does apple cider vinegar last? Oh, sorry, Diana, I was just reading your question again. The next plant that we're going to talk about is rose. Rose is one of my very favorites. Tangy. Did everybody get to try the apple cider? Yeah. How would you describe it? I heard tangy.
Vinegary.
Zing, vinegary. What did it do in your mouth when you took it?
Induces saliva.
It did what?
Induces production of saliva.
It induces saliva. What else?
I feel like they're woken me up.
Awesome. Woke him up and gave him some energy. Every time I think about it, it makes my cheeks water. Cool. I'm glad you got to taste that. Okay. So roses are one of my favorites, and we're going to pass these around, and I want you to do the same. So you have your rose petals. I want you to smell it. These roses are lovely because they have a beautiful smell. So we're going to smell it. We're going to even like crunch it a little bit. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it helps to release the essential oils that are in the plant. And then if you feel like it and you feel comfortable, maybe you even taste a petal or two and see what you think. I think they taste lovely. Okay. Yeah, totally make one.
For the roses, does it matter what type they are? There's so many like wild roses, like on the mountain.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, so the question was, does it matter what kind of roses that we use? When you're using rose medicine, wild rose is like definitely something to look for. So if you have wild roses growing in the mountains that you have access to, or even in your own garden, that's a really good plant to be using. I have different types of roses growing in my garden. We don't use any pesticides, and so I do use all of those roses for medicine. The wild roses tend to have really strong essential oils, and the essential oils are often the piece that's giving you the medicine. What you want to be careful is you don't want to use roses from like a florist or the grocery store. And the reason for that is commercial rose growing, they use so many pesticides on the plant that it could actually make you sick to take them in. So you just don't want to use those. But these are little wild roses. Did everybody get a chance to taste them?
Yes. For the chat, there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Is it true that when drinking apple cider vinegar, you're supposed to just shoot it down the throat and make sure it doesn't touch your teeth?
I've never heard that, Heaven. I would think that maybe the reason is for the acidity, that it would like affect the enamel on your teeth. That would be an interesting practice. And so, yeah, you could totally do that. I know some people like mouthwash with it too, though, so I'm not quite sure, or gargle with it. But yeah, I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt that that would be a true thing.
Yeah.
So what does it smell like?
Rice pudding.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah. There's another question.
Mm.
Are you supposed to wash your herbs before using them?
Oh, that's a good question too. Okay, so I do two things. Sometimes I don't wash my herbs right before I use them. If they're dry, I never wash them before I use them. But if I'm collecting them fresh, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. If I'm using roots, like if I'm going to dig up dandelion root, like I definitely would want to wash those and then just make sure they're drying really well. With leaves, it just depends on, on where I'm collecting them, how dirty they might look. Sometimes I don't use them. If I'm collecting for other people, sometimes I will, just so that I'm making sure that it's a little bit cleaner. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it depends. What else does rose taste like?
So it's like rose to me because I tasted it before. So.
It's a little bit bitter after this.
Did it make anybody's tongue feel kind of dry?
Yeah.
So rose is an astringent, which means that it kind of sucks up the moisture, or like brings the astringents can also kind of tighten like blood vessels, right? So that's one really cool thing about roses. They are, when I think about using rose medicine, I think about boundaries. And I think about love, right? So we often associate roses with love, but roses are also about boundaries because they have the thorns, right? And so those thorns are a way that the plant kind of signifies to others, like, hey, like, be careful, watch out for my space, watch out for what I've got. It's a way to, in using roses, it's a way to like cultivate healthy boundaries. So if that is something that you are working with in your life, you could even put some of the rose thorns into your oxymel. So thinking about all the different pieces of the plant, like it's not just the flowers that we're going to use. Sometimes we are really wanting to cultivate those strong kind of spiky boundaries. Rose is great for trauma. It's great for grief. It's great for depression and anxiety. It's good for love and devotion. And it's also really good for the skin. So sometimes I'll do like a face wash without the honey, and I'll just do apple cider vinegar with roses and chamomile, and I use it on my face, and it's a very nice like tightening toner. So I keep looking at the chat to see if there's any questions. So if y'all have any questions, we will keep going and get to your questions as they arise. So, okay.
This might be a stupid question, but where can we buy these herbs? Like milky oats and wild roses.
Yeah, that's not a stupid question. That's a great question. There are no stupid questions. So where can you buy your herbs? There are some local stores, Taos Mountain Herbs up in Taos, Milagro Herbs in Santa Fe, Herbs Etc. in Santa Fe. Those are all local herb shops.
So Milagro and what else?
Milagro Herbs, it's on 6th Street. Herbs Etc. is also in Santa Fe. Those are both local shops. There's a lot of herbalists that are selling at the farmers markets. I know that, I think I saw Cheryl is on the chat or in the Zoom world, and Cheryl's got some really great medicinal mushrooms. They also have bulk herbs from time to time. So I would say like those are really great places to start. I'm a really big proponent of growing your own herbs if you can too, because when we're growing our own herbs, we're using all of our energy into the seed, into the soil, putting all of our prayers, our time, our attention. Even if it's just like a little pot, right? We don't have to get really crazy and have huge gardens. It can be just a little pot that we're putting our time, our love, and our attention into to grow one plant. So it could even be like a little wild rose plant that you're growing in your own garden. Yes. So, okay, so we have the roses. So what we're gonna do for the roses, if you haven't already, we're gonna take some rose petals and we're just gonna like sprinkle them in.
How many would you suggest? Like just one or two of these? Or?
I would do like, you know, a little more.
Okay.
We have enough, so I would even do a little more than that. Like I'd give yourself a nice little layer on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah. There you go. One of my favorite things is when you're making the medicines and you have the layers of herbs and you can see them kind of as you're going. Let's see. Will you pass me the milky tops and I will make one on this side for our folks at home. Okay, so here is our milky oats. So I'm going to add these. All right. Oh, sorry, Kat.
And we have more.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have.
Yeah.
Kathleen's question is, are all of these easy to grow here? I'm growing oats for the very first time this year. It's super easy, like really easy, kind of surprisingly so. Yeah. And it's like they're surprising because they weren't there and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I have oats. And it was very, yeah, they're pretty easy to maintain. The one thing that I've had a hard time growing is chamomile. I don't know why. I just do. But some folks do it really well. So I know it could just be me.
I'm still trying to get my thumbs greener.
Yeah. And, you know, I'd say like start with one or two plants. If you're interested in growing something at home, like find a plant that you feel really curious about or you feel already like you have a relationship with. And start by growing that plant and sitting with that plant and making tea out of it and making medicine with it. And some people will even put it under their pillow at night.
So I have a suggestion for growing plants. They like music.
Oh,
They like gentlemen. Yes. And I do speak to my plants, yes.
yeah.
I will have them grow.
Do you sing to your plants?
Yes.
Yes. I sing to my plants too. That's what I was asking. Oh, I love that. So Paulette was saying that we should sing to our plants and play them gentle music. All right, so we are adding our roses to our milky oat tops. So I have my roses here. You can do a couple of things. You can break them up and just kind of put them like that. Sometimes they say that the more surface area that the herb has to absorb into the menstruum or the liquid that it's being absorbed into, the better. So some people will really like grind their herbs up. You've seen people do that. You could just put them in whole as well. And you know, when it comes to fresh plants versus dried plants, you can use both when it comes to tincture making and to oxymel making. And the one thing about it is that if you're using fresh plants, they don't have a tendency to be as strong. And so sometimes you want to use a little bit more. And the reason for that is that they haven't dried and the essential oils haven't kind of concentrated in the plant enough to make them as strong. But I love using fresh roses actually for my oxymels and just take them right off the plant and stick them inside. So did you get roses? Okay. Cool. So you can see we're starting to make our little base. Or just something to drink. I just ate that rose and it's like stuck in my throat. Okay. So the next plant we're going to talk about, does anybody know what this is? Chamomile. So this is chamomile or Monstania. This is also one of my very favorite plants. gosh, chamomile. I'm going to ask you all, what do you think chamomile is good for?
Infection of skin,
Yes.
eye wash,
Yes.
tea during illness,
Yes.
Stomach ache.
calming, sleep.
So did everybody hear that? Sleep, calming, skin infection, eye wash, teas. What else?
Sick bath,
That.
sick bath.
A sick bath. So you can use herbs for making a bath. You can do that by just making a really strong pot of tea that you then pour into your bath. Or you can get like a little bag, like a mesh bag, or a muslin bag, and fill it with your herbs and actually put it into your bath. So both ways work. And that's one way for your body to absorb the herbs, because our skin is the largest organ on our body. And that's often the way that we can take herbs in as well. So it doesn't have to be just internally. I use chamomile a lot for anxiety and sleeplessness. It's calming. It decreases inflammation. And when I think about inflammation, I think about, first let me say this, I think about inflammation a lot. I don't know why, but I do think about like our minds get like really bothered. So we think like hot and bothered, right? And we're like, like our bodies internally can get like that as well. So when I'm thinking about like this increased inflammatory state in our bodies, I often think of my body just being like really like tense and pushed to the limits and red and raw inside. So chamomile is really great for soothing all of that. It's great for social anxiety. So if you're somebody who has a hard time going out in the crowd, speaking in public, chamomile can be a great plant for you. I often think about chamomile as specifically for children, because it's great for babies who are teething. So what I've done is I've made like a nice strong tea, and I've made it into ice cubes, and you can let, put the ice cubes in something, let the baby kind of suck on it, or make like ice pops out of it, and the baby suck on the ice pop, and it's good for swollen gums, for pain, for inflammation again. I often think too about chamomile for babies or for children or even for adults. It's really great when you have the baby or the child that's like, hold me mama, hold me, and they don't ever want to be put down, and they always want to be in your arms. This is a great plant for those little babies. And it's a really great plant for babies or people in general when we get whiny, right? When we're not getting our way, or we really need to have our needs met and they're not being met, and we get super whiny, or our little ones get super whiny. This is a great herb for that as well. Or for people who are bothered by everything. So, and sometimes I feel like that, right? If I'm super stressed out or I've had a lot of grief, like my capacity might be really low, and it's a lot easier for me to get bothered by everything around me. Anything anybody's saying, driving down the street, going to the store, like everything feels really intense, then that's time for chamomile tea. Bless you. Chamomile is part of the ragwort family, chrysanthemum family, so it could cause allergies. So if you are allergic to chrysanthemum, this don't take this. It's also has an essential oil in it that can cause uterine contractions. So if you are pregnant, this is not an herb for you, because it can cause your uterus to contract. It's also not something to take if you're using blood thinners. So I wanted to say all of that before I pass it around. So if you feel like none of those two apply to you, then please take a minute to smell it, taste it, all the same things that we just did. And let me put a stick in here. So,
So if you're sick and you're taking Tylenol or aspirin and you're taking Tylenol, will that reaction
that's
go out?
that's a good question. I think that if you're taking aspirin every day, then you wouldn't want to drink chamomile tea. But if you are sick and you have like, aspirin, and you're drinking just a cup, like that's not going to make a huge difference. Yeah. But yeah, if you're taking anything kind of as a medical, yeah, like a medical remedy, right? Like aspirin or any other blood thinner, then you would want to avoid it. Yeah. And some people say chamomile's okay after the first trimester. I just like to be careful because you never know. So if you're pregnant, there's lots of like amazing herbs. Just wait till after your first trimester or maybe choose something else. So for those who have tasted it or smelled it, what does it smell like? It's coming.
It's sweet. Yeah, sweet.
Sweet. What does it look like?
It's like a ball of pollen. Give me problems.
The ball of pollen waiting to give him problems, he said.
Little sunshines.
Little sunshines. Aw. Chamomile always reminds me of my Auntie Dixie. So like sometimes certain plants bring up certain people as well. And so sometimes I think it's not even just the medicine that they have inside of them, but who they carry with them. So every time I use it, I bring her into the space too. So it's like bee pollen. Does anybody taste apple?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like when apples are, what is it called? Like kind of made into chips.
Oh yeah. Like dried apples.
Dried up.
Mhm. One of the other names of chamomile is Mayapple, just because they say that it has like an apple-y flavor or scent to it. So here is our chamomile or manzanilla. Are there any questions about any of the 3 herbs that we've talked about to this point? No? Okay. So, where are we in the chat? I'm bothered by insects. Oh.
Can I just add that there's space in the Q&A for people to add their comments and experiences with the herbs too.
Oh, menstrual cramps. Thanks, Heaven. Yeah. Yes, so chamomile can definitely be used for menstrual cramps as well. So I tend to think about it as like pain relieving too. So chamomile is sort of like underrated, I think, as far as a lot of plants. They think it's like this thin, tiny little plant. It's not very strong, but it actually is a super strong, very useful medicine. The next plant we're going to talk about is lemon balm. So I'm going to pass this one around as well. Lemon balm is another one of my favorites. It's one of the first plants that I ever grew. It's part of the mint family. And even though it's part of the mint family, it has a very strong, like lemony scent and flavor to it. So when you have the fresh herb, you can rub the leaves like this and smell them, and it's like this bright, fresh, zingy goodness. Lemon balm has been used for centuries to uplift the spirits. So yeah, they call it like to be merry and to uplift the spirits, to gladden the heart. These are like old terms that people use for this plant. It's very calming to the spirit. They say it's like an all-purpose plant. So it's good for the emotional heart, it's good for the physical body, it's antiviral, it's antimicrobial, it's antibacterial, it's antispasmodic, it's a vulnerary, which means it's good for pain. It's a mild antidepressant, it's a sedative, which means it's calming, it's a nervine, which means it's good for your nervous system. Like it does everything. And it's good to use with, with babies too. And it makes a really yummy tea. It's also, because it's antiviral, I do like to tell people this because I think sometimes, anyways, it's always good to say that it's really great and kind of specific for cold sores and the herpes simplex virus. So for the virus itself, using the essential oil, it's kind of strong. It can make you kind of zing a little bit, but it's really well known for taking care of like sores.
I'm sorry, what about canker sores?
Canker sores too, although I would use it, I would cut it with an oil just so it doesn't burn too much. It's really great at balancing your feelings and your emotions. And one of the other things that I really like about it is if you're somebody who gets really overwhelmed, for example, going into Walmart, right? I mean, going into Walmart anyways, it's overwhelming, but if it's like because there's like 1,000 people there and everyone's coming at you, or if you're in a large crowd and you get really overwhelmed, lemon balm is a really great tea or remedy to utilize because it can help to hold energetic space around you. So I've definitely used it for that.
I have a question. When would you harvest?
When would I harvest lemon balm?
Depending on the size of the leaf.
The leaves, it grows like a mint plant. And so, I mean, I would harvest when like the plant feels like a little like big enough, but before it flowers. Yeah, so as long as the leaves are still green, and you can kind of continually harvest, they'll keep putting up new shoots. Lemon balm is really easy to grow here. It grows as a perennial and it'll spread. So it's something that's nice to have in your gardens. Did anybody get to smell it? Did you try, what does it smell like? Try.
Like minty.
Minty?
Yeah.
Did anybody taste it?
Yeah, as that flavor saying right. Minty lemon.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at the difference between a dried herb and a fresh plant. So again, if you have the opportunity to get a fresh plant, you can really see and smell the essential oils in it. So yeah, just try it. I'm like, try it. It's easy. Just put some water on it.
What do you mean by fresh? Like when it has flowers on it?
Like when it's just like when it's alive. So if you're able to just put like a fresh, like a plant that's growing in your garden, that medicine can be really strong and beautiful to smell and to have that really strong flavor. Sometimes when it's dry, it's like it starts to lose its vital essence, right? Like you can tell it's a mint, but it's kind of like different than if you were to put a fresh mint leaf in your mouth.
I've noticed that the lemon balm smells really lemony as you're growing it, and then when it's dry, it's more of that minty.
That minty flavor.
Yeah.
Is there any place that sells the plants?
Most garden stores will sell the herbal plants. I know, like I saw even like Whole Foods was selling a bunch of herbs. Plants of the Southwest sells them.
That's on our free, right?
That one's on Agua Fria. I'm surprised at how easy it is to grow things from seed too. So I'll just throw that out there. So we can pay like $3 or $4 for like a little tiny plant, or we can like pay $3 or $4 for a packet of seeds and throw them in the ground, and then you get lots of plants. So throwing that out there. If you're able to. I'm new to this whole thing, but I love it. Okay, so is that the lemon balm? Yes. Thank you. Did
So
you get?
just to clarify, you were saying to use more of the fresh or more of the dry? Or does it depend on the
You would use more of the fresh plant,
more?
but when it comes, did you get this one? Yes. When it comes to lemon balm, you'll smell more of the essential oil in the fresh plant. So that might be where the more is coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, so it takes more plant when you're using fresh plant to get the same medicinal strength, but the essential oils are often much stronger. So, okay, so here we are. Let's go to motherwort. Has anybody ever heard of motherwort? Awesome. Oh, I'm hearing yeses. What is motherwort good for? Or what have you heard about it?
I have used it with families in a practice that I was in for yoni steam postpartum,
Oh, cool.
but I don't remember specifically why we added it. It
Okay.
was just something that was
One of the
added.
herbs. So she is saying using for like postpartum yoni steams. So there's lots of ways to use herbs, and one of those is to do it through a steam. So you would get pot of boiling water, you would add your herbs, and then you can, like you would steam your face, you can steam your yoni after birth. And do you want to talk about maybe why that's beneficial? Do you know?
I mean, definitely postpartum is about warmth and bringing warmth to the body, healing tissues, vaginal tissues. I don't remember if that one's correct, if it's like brings vivid dreams. Is it a vivid dream group?
I haven't
might be
used,
confusing it with another.
I've heard of mugwort for vivid
Mugwort,
dreams.
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm like, this might too, if you sat with it.
Maybe it was mugwort. that I
Yeah.
was thinking of. Yeah, those are just a couple of the things.
Cool.
I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well, I mean, I think also about postpartum yoni steams is just helping to heal like perennial tissues and stretch. Maybe, sometimes things tear after birth, or sometimes there's an episiotomy. It just can help to like tighten everything up and make everything really nice and healed up.
In addition to quiet meditation time,
Yes.
which is always good.
Yes, absolutely. So motherwort is called the mother's herb. So it's good for mothers who have lots of anxiety and stress. It's good for people who tend to over-mother other people. And I'll say, you don't have to identify as a female to be somebody who mothers other people. So if you have a tendency to over-mother, if you are somebody who needs to be mothered, right? So sometimes our relationships with our moms aren't always the best relationships. And there's something that we might need healing around. Motherwort is a good herb for that. This is a great plant for heartache and heartbreak. So it doesn't have to be from a love relationship. It can be the heartache and heartbreak from the wildfires that we all just experienced, or from COVID. So anything that's really like hurting the heart, motherwort is, I think about it as like a big, nice warm hug, right? She just comes in and she's just like, I'm here and I got you. She is relaxing and calming in stressful situations. So if you've got any kind of, let's say you've got a family member who's ill, and you're doing a lot of the caretaking, or if you're in a job that's really pushing you to your limits, this is a great herb. It's got a very relaxing effect on all the muscles, tendons, ligaments, and membranes of the body. In particular, this is called it's called like a woman's herb, or an herb for folks who have uteruses. It's very good for PMS, fertility issues, painful menstruation, hot flashes, lack of menses, delayed menses. It's good for toning the uterus in general. So if you are working with pregnant or postpartum folks, this is a great herb to bring into your repertoire, which is part of why it probably was in your postpartum yoni steams. This herb is not to be used during pregnancy though, so that's something to note, because it does, it's an emmenagogue, so it can bring on bleeding. So if you are not wanting to bleed during a menstrual cycle, you would not take this herb. But if you're trying to bring on bleeding, let's say you have a delayed period, or your periods are really light, this might be an herb that would bring on more bleeding and help to kind of issue that forth.
How, because I know like different herbs will do bring on bleeding, like mugwort and then yarrow, kind of like, but I know they do it in different ways. So how would mugwort, what is it do in the body to bring on?
That's a good question. It's an emmenagogue, so it induces it induces bleeding. But I'm not sure if it does that through uterine contractions. That's kind of what I'm thinking, because it tones the uterus.
Would it have to do with like the blood vessels, like
I don't think it's,
dilating?
yeah, that's a vasodilator. So that's not what this one is as much, just because it is more specific to the, like the uterine area and reproductive area.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. Kind of finally, like this is a good herb if you are kind of stuck in patterns. So if you have a family where there's like kind of repetitive patterns in the way that you all relate to each other, or if you're in a relationship and you kind of find yourself going through the same loops again and again, this can be like a great herb to kind of help to bring that to the next level. So I'm going to take a little bit, put it in that thing, and pass it on. Thank you. And let's see, I'm just doing a time check, 6:13. Awesome. Okay. So as Chastity passes that around, I am going to be talking about our very last plant. This plant is coming to you all in two different ways. So this is dandelion. Yeah. I hear you. This is dandelion. We have dandelion root and then dandelion leaf. So you can use the entire plant, which I've done. Like you can go out in your backyard and you can dig up a dandelion and you can just pluck that whole baby into your jar and use that, or you can chop it up and use that. But you can also use them separately because they have a little bit of different qualities. So dandelion, the root in particular works with the liver, and the leaf works with your kidneys. So with the leaf, I'll just say too, like you can eat dandelion leaves, which is kind of cool. They're pretty bitter, but they're a really strong, lovely food, wild food. So just to know that, you want to make sure that if you're collecting dandelion, you're not doing it in any place that's been sprayed. So you want to make sure that, you know, it's in a nice clean environment. You also don't ever want to collect herbs off the roadside. So that's just something else to note. They say it's good to at least like 50 feet away from a roadside, because then it takes, just imagine like all of like the oil and the gas and like all of the chemicals that leak from our cars, and they kind of go and filter into the roadside. And yeah, just to say like, we don't want to absorb that into our bodies if we can help it. One of the, like the French call dandelion pissenlit, which basically like is like piss a lot, right? Like so that it helps to increase urine.
What do they call it?
Pissenlit. So it increases urine. It increases urine production, which is great, right? Because it helps if you've got excess water retention, if you've got edema. It can help to clear any excess water in our bodies. I'm going to put this in here. Pass this on. Dandelion root is again specific to the liver. Oh, were you raising your hand for a question?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I think I'm feeding a mosquito.
Oh no. Dandelion root is specific to the liver. You can also roast it, and you can make like a coffee substitute with it. So you can take it, you can like eat dandelion flowers, you can eat dandelion leaves, you can roast the root, you can drink it in tea. It specifically detoxifies our liver. So I think a lot about all of the things that we're exposed to every single day, right? With our food, with the environment. Our bodies are constantly taking in toxins, and we do lots of things to help like clear that out of our bodies. But using certain herbs can help to kind of speed up that process. And dandelion is one of them. Just a little bit, because it's a nice strong herb. when I think about our livers and our kidneys, our livers in Chinese medicine are associated with the emotion of anger. And our kidneys are associated with the emotion of fear. And so why would fear and anger be part of grief and loss? Like sometimes when we think about wanting to take care of grief and loss, we don't even think about the anger that's associated with it. But a lot of times it's there and it's like a foundational underlying emotion. And I think it's actually really an important emotion to kind of work with so that we're able to release that grief and that loss. And so that's why oftentimes, actually, like I would say like 90% of times that I'm making remedies, I actually do work with dandelion, or I work with an herb for the liver, just because we always do want to like promote the detoxification of the liver, to promote liver function, and also just because I think it's helpful.
Can I add, so one of the things that I'm learning too is that the kidneys and the lungs work really, they work together. So it's also interesting that lungs are associated with grief. So it's interesting that you see that anger and maybe the lack of releasing is also that.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times, right, when we've had grief and then like what comes along with that is the fear that it's going to happen again too, right? And it's like this kind of thing that's tied in together.
Because I've learned that the kidneys help pull the breath from the lungs in. So when the kidneys aren't functioning in that sense, then there's a lot of trouble with the lung breathing. Yeah, or bringing the oxygen into your body. So.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. How's your oxymel baby starting to look here?
Ah,
You can kind of mix it up if you want. You can smell it and see what it smells like. Does it smell good? Oh, good. Don't take too big of a breath. The next thing that we're gonna do is, do people need a break? Do we need to take a little break? We're getting kind of close to the end here too. We're okay? Okay. Okay. This is, it should be fun, right? Working with fun should be fun. It shouldn't be scary. And it's something that you can do with kids, which I think is really cool too. Like bring your kids into doing this work with you. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna add our apple cider to our plant. And I have two beautiful, big, gigantic jars of apple cider.
You see right here?
No, that was honey.
Oh, I took it to
Okay, cool. So she's gonna get the big jars, but for the sake of our friends at home, I'm not gonna try and pour that into my thing. So what we're gonna do, you can use different quantities, but they say, you know, you can use like half and half, so half apple cider, half honey. Sometimes I don't want to use as much honey, so I'll use like 2/3 apple cider vinegar and 1/3 honey. It kind of just depends on your own flavor taste. But I'm gonna add my apple cider.
you said you use half and half.
You can
I
use,
immediately thought.
milk. Oh yeah, don't use milk.
I was like, oh, I don't know about that.
I mean, that would be a different kind of thing.
It's gonna curdle now.
Yeah, it would totally curdle. So we have here, as you can see, it's kind of pushed up my thing here. And I'm gonna pass this over.
So a question,
Yes.
because the list of herbs is quite long.
Yes.
How many on average would you put in?
Oh, that's a great question. The question for those of you at home is how many herbs do you put into one recipe? I don't know that there's like a specific answer, because some herbal remedies will take tons of different herbs, and others just take the one, like you can just do simpling.
So personal preference, basically.
I think that there's not really a preference. I tend to think about herbal formulations and like the main herb that you're trying to have that like main action, right? So, and I mean, or like the main action that you're trying, and then you have your supportive herbs, and then you have your herbs for the liver. So like I said, I always bring in herbs for the liver. That's how I was taught, and I think it's helpful. So you can add anything in combination to that. We have like 6 different herbs in this recipe. Any one of those would do the same sort of thing, but they work really well together. So yeah. Let's see.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, herbs for the liver, it's like you bake something, right?
Herbs for the liver right now?
No,
Sorry, I'm hearing all the
I
background too.
know. Someone's. So you sort of favor herbs for the liver as a main herb in a mix.
Oh, that's a good question. I just always make sure that I include something.
Something. Okay.
Yeah, just for me, just because I like to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, just because I think like if we're sick, our body is trying to push out that toxin. If we've got something emotional going on, we're still processing that through. If it's hormones, we're processing. Like our liver is a big churner. So it's always helping us to like transform something in the body.
So what other herbs besides dandelion?
Besides dandelion, chicory, any of the docks are really good. Milk thistle, yeah, gentian. Those are like the main ones that I use. Yeah.
Do you notice that herbs that work with the liver usually like root?
Oh, that's interesting.
That's what I've noticed.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, that is cool. Okay. So we have, I would like to put a little bit more apple cider in mine. Would you pass that down later? Just because, I'm not sweet. So I'm adding a little bit more to mine just because I like it that way. And then we're gonna add our honey. Are there any questions in the chat?
There is. Can you see them or do you want me to?
You have a resource to check.
Let's see. Yes, I see. Ingesting motherwort is like receiving a soothing, loving hug from the plant people. That's what Cheryl says. Motherwort is good for the heart, says anonymous attendee. Dandelion is a good bitter for digestion when taken before the meal. So that's good to think about too. Like if you are somebody who tends to have a really hard time digesting fatty foods, taking a bitter before you eat can help to stimulate the bile production in your body, and it makes it a little bit easier to digest. And dandelion is one of those things that does that. And then Esperanza says, do you have a resource to check if your meds conflict with an herb? Oh, Esperanza, I'm sure that there is somewhere a database, but I just tend to Google. So I would look up like dandelion contraindications or dandelion medical contraindications, because I don't have that exact resource.
Yeah, there's a site called WebMD that might have that.
Okay, so WebMD, WEBMD, that's a site that Paula is saying would have list the contraindications. Okay, so it's really easy. We're just pouring our honey.
So WebMD is looked down by medical, by many people in the medical field, because they tend to publish things that are not always correct. So just cross-check with other websites.
Oh, good to know.
And publications.
I just am gonna bring a little, just because we're working with a few different people. So here is honey. You guys already passed that. Okay, let's pass it this way. Okay. So I'm gonna just cut mine off a little bit more. So you want it to be like kind of to this line here. You don't want it much higher because then it'll spill over. And you don't really want it too much. I mean, you can make it lower, but if there's not as much air in your jar, that's better. And everyone should have a parchment paper. So let's see, will you give me one of those parchment papers? This is the list. So the next thing that you want to do before you cap yours, you want to put your parchment paper down before you put your cap on. And I tend to think of the waxy side down. And the reason for that is because the apple cider vinegar interacts with the metal of your lid and it can corrode it. So this keeps it from touching, corroding. And you have your remedy that looks like this. Is there any more honey? There's some more honey.
Yeah, the waxy isn't, it's a little bit smoother.
Okay, thank you.
Did we get labels?
Yes, they're like
Okay.
somewhere.
Yeah. So
Yes.
then the only last thing that you would do is you want to label your remedy. And I'll tell you all, I had planned on bringing you like a few different labels or oxymels to taste because I wanted you to see what they felt like, but I didn't label them. And so even though you think like I did, or I'm like, I'll totally remember what this is, you don't. Like I promise you, you will forget what you put inside of that, especially once you strain it. So we are going to label our oxymel. And you usually want to start with labeling from the ingredient that you have the most of to the ingredient that you have the least of. And so, so we need pens. Does everybody have a pen? Okay. We can pass some pens around if you don't have it. But more honey too. And since we're making this together, we get to name this remedy. So do we remember what is it going to be used for? Grief and loss, stress, anxiety, heart grief. So each of you gets to name your remedy, or we can come up with like a collective name, and I'll kind of put that out there. Let's see. I'm just making sure that there's no other questions. Does anybody in the Zoom class part have a question? What do you think of the ratio of plant material to menstruum? That's a great question. So Cheryl is asking about the ratio of plant medicine to the menstruum. The menstruum is the liquid, again, that we're using to extract. Typically, when I'm making this at home, I would do at least half of the material, half of it would be plant material to half of it be liquid. So I think, Cheryl, if I was doing this at home, I would have added more plant material, but we did not have quite as much plant material, so that it passed around, each person took a little bit. But yeah, if you're making it at home, you can put at least half of your jar with plant material. And I'll say, like, it doesn't hurt to put a little bit more, but you just get less liquid in the end. What would you say, Cheryl? Cheryl is a friend of mine. I've known her for forever. She's an amazing herbalist, and I'm really like excited that she is in this class today.
Do you think it depends on like if you're making an oxymel versus a tincture with alcohol versus like using herbs with just water, the ratio?
If I'm using herbs with just water, I don't tend to put as much plant. If I'm using a tincture, I do usually put at least half would be plant as well. Yeah, I'm curious to see. Carol says 1 to 2 is her favorite ratio. So she's plant to 2 parts liquid. I think, is that what you're saying? 1 part plant to 2 parts liquid, Cheryl? Are you saying 2 parts plant to 1 part liquid? I would think maybe the other way around. Okay, so are we labeling our herbs? So you want to list all the herbs in it. So we have, can we write this down on the board, Delavai, so that we have a list of them? Awesome. So this remedy had chamomile, milky oat tops, tops, like TOPS, and then lemon balm, motherwort. What else do we have here? Rose, and then dandelion root and leaf. Bless you. I'll even say, like, sometimes I put a vanilla bean in it because it tastes really good. It makes it smell really good. Like, you can get kind of creative with these. So those plus we can add apple cider vinegar and honey. So your label should have all of those things listed as ingredients. Bless you. Oh no.
So when this is ready, how much and how often do you?
Right, that's a good question. So when this is ready, how much and how often? I think that when you're using a remedy for the first time, it's good to start small and then you can increase as you like. So, you know, you can do between 20 to 40 drops to start, which could be like essentially like a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon just to try it out. And, you know, doing that 1 to 2 times a day and see if there's anything that you notice. And then if you like, you can increase it to 30 to 60 drops 3 times a day. And you know, it's apple cider vinegar and honey, right? So it's not like you're using alcohol. So it is more of a food base. And so sometimes like I'll just pour it into a little, like if I'm sick, I pour a little bit into a cup and I just kind of do this all day long. Like I just make sure that I'm drinking it all day long. 30 to 60 drops, yeah. Yeah. And you want to, so essentially like here we are, and you can kind of see how you have a separation between your honey and your apple cider. So you just want to shake it a few times a day. You do want to keep it in a cool, dark place. So you could keep it in your refrigerator, but it might make the honey a little hard. So if you keep it in your cabinet to start, that should be fine. You shake it up 2 to 3 times a day, and you can let it sit between 2 to 6 weeks. So depending on how long you want it to go, when it's, yeah, before you start taking it, 2 to 6 weeks. And it has a shelf life once it's all finished of about 6 months. So, you know, like use it. So you just made yourself a beautiful remedy. Use it and share it with your family and make more. When it's done, I think it has a tendency to have this like very smooth, sweet, sour taste to it. So if you take it and it has kind of a sharp sour taste, you might want to add a little bit more honey, or you might let it sit a little longer. So those would be 2 things. Or maybe you like it having that apple cider vinegar taste. That's fine too.
Will this ferment?
Will it ferment?
There's a yeast mother and there's honey.
Yeah,
there's
yeah. I do tend to like at about like 4 weeks. Like I will like to 4 weeks, I will kind of try it and see. But yeah, you can totally burp it, which would mean essentially you're just kind of removing the lid to like let the air out. I've never had one ferment on me or like bust or combust. Yeah, it's like, well, not quite like kombucha, but yeah, I know.
Does adding the honey preserve it a little longer?
It definitely helps to preserve it. Yeah. And you can do two things. So I like to strain my herbs. So when it's all complete, let's say we're like 4 weeks out, you want to strain your herbs from your menstruum, and then you would put it in a fresh jar. And you might notice when you're all done, your lid might look a little like dark. Like you can totally clean that off. As you're making it, you can replace your lid. That might be really helpful too. Sometimes the parchment paper will get a little funky. So you want to replace your parchment paper, and it's just the mixture of the acid and the metal together. So you just replace it. And you would strain it, you'd put it in a new bottle, and you'd label that new bottle. So that's where I went wrong. This last time I didn't label my new bottle, and all oxymels look similar when they're bottles. Let's see, do you let it sit for a moon cycle 4 weeks? Okay, so Cheryl is saying when she's using dried herbs, she uses more. So 1 part herb to 3 parts water, or 1 part herb to 4 parts water. And then she's suggesting letting it sit for a moon cycle. Yes, a lot of times when I'm working with herbs at home, I will make something on new moons or full moons. And I kind of let it sit for that entirety of that circle, depending on what cycle I'm working with. And yeah, 4 weeks is a great time. Are there any questions? Did you all name your oxymels? Yes? Does anyone want to share what their name is?
I just named mine oxymel corazon.
Oh, I love that. Oxymel Corazon. My business is called Colibri Corazon.
Oh,
I love that. That makes me happy.
me too.
What else? What are we going to name our medicines? Heart healing. I love that.
An unexpected hug.
Oh, he said an unexpected hug. I'm like, that's lovely. Are there any other questions? We are like getting real close here to 7 o'clock. Are there any questions about making the oxymel itself? Did you all smell it once it was kind of all made and shook up? No, take a smell. Take a smell. Take a whiff. So be careful if you have allergies.
And the shaking it 3 times a day, that's like after it's done, or the 4 weeks?
No, you want to shake it kind of continually. So yeah, between now and like the end of 4 weeks, you want to keep shaking it.
It's a living thing.
It's a living thing.
Right?
Yeah. And you know, when you're shaking it, like maybe you're making this for yourself, or maybe you're making this for somebody that you love or know or don't know yet. Things to think about, right? Like you're putting your love and your heart and your intention into it. So when you're shaking it, you're like saying your prayer to it, you're saying your thoughts for it, like the things that you are asking for it to work with and heal. Maybe if you're working with a particular person, you're holding that person in your heart and your mind as you're doing this. You want to, when I'm working with plants, I make sure that I'm in a good space. I don't make remedies unless I'm in a good space, because all of that goes into somebody and into what I'm working with. And you know, and if I'm working with like fresh plants, I always want to ask permission. So that's the other piece. If you're collecting, you want to make sure that the plant's giving consent. The land is giving consent for you to collect from. And I always say who or what I'm working with it for. So if I'm collecting cottonwood bud, I can say like, I'm collecting cottonwood bud for pain relief, you know, can I have some? Is this, do you consent? I say my prayers to it. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, just don't do it. I mean, it's, you know, it's part of it's listening to.
So I have a question. If stored in the fridge would lengthen the lifespan.
I have stored it in the fridge after I've strained it. So after it's all made and I've strained it, I've definitely stored it in the fridge. And you know, I don't tend to have oxymel sit around my house for longer than 6 months anyways. So, I mean, it might make it last a little bit longer, Cheryl. Like, I mean, you could maybe like keep it up to, like if I'm making, for example, fire cider, I might keep fire cider going for like a full season. Yeah, that would definitely extend its life. And fire cider, I do keep that in the fridge. So I would say yes. Fire cider, let's talk fire cider because that's it is cool. Fire cider is an oxymel that has this really interesting political background around it, or like story around it. It is essentially the same apple cider vinegar and honey, but inside you can put garlic, onions, horseradish, peppers, like chili peppers. I put like lemon or orange. You can put like pungent herbs like rosemary or gosh, what else? Like oregano, anything kind of like really strong and spicy. And what was that?
I don't know, I just have
Cinnamon, yes, you
sounds
can.
like mama water.
Mama water?
Mama water, but it's you make it with rum. So it's like
Oh,
all the same spices, but it's like a herbal spiced rum.
oh, interesting. I haven't heard about that. Will you write it down for me so I can look it up? I'm like, where? Do you write it here? But fire cider is, it's like one of those things that people have just been making in their kitchens for forever, right? And it's used, thank you. It's used for any kind of illness. It's really antiviral, antibacterial, antimicrobial. I take it all winter long. So it's like, I usually we'll make it, you know, right in the fall time during harvest. And then I have it all through the winter and into the spring. And it's the same exact process. You would use fresh plants, right? So you chop up your fresh garlic and your fresh onion and all of that, and you put that into your jar. So the interesting thing about fire cider is that not too long ago, gosh, I think within the last 5 years, a company came in and decided to trademark fire cider. So this is a traditional remedy that's been made for forever that nobody owns. But this company came in and they trademarked the name fire cider. So nobody could sell fire cider without impinging upon their trademark rules, which made everybody enraged and furious, because how can you trademark something that has been used for forever? So a bunch of herbalists actually took the company to court and sued them. And it was this huge conversation over who owns the rights to traditional knowledge when it comes to working with plant medicines. And the company lost. And so now anybody can make fire cider. We could before, we still did it. But can use the actual term fire cider. And it really kind of protected that traditional knowledge around plant medicines and around like these recipes. So it's interesting to think about, like, I guess just all the politics that go behind making herbs too, and making remedies and taking care of our bodies. So please don't ever trademark herbs. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
I have a question about, like, I've been trying to understand this for a couple months, but so, like, for example, with fire cider, a lot of the stuff they use are really stimulating herbs or stimulating foods, herbs. So then how do you, like, think about that? I guess it would just be like listening to your body, but, you know, in some cases, people react to that instant. I mean, I think I think of that as being something that helps smooth things, stimulate things, but it also can be inflammatory.
Yeah.
So just thinking about how you move
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah. That's a good question. So all herbs have a different energy to them, right? Some of them are heating, some of them are cooling, and just like us, right? Like some of us tend to run a little bit hotter, some of us tend to run a little bit cooler. Sometimes it's like there's like people and like their bodies tend to always be really phlegmy and they have a lot of like mucus and they tend to get colds a lot, and other people tend to be really dry and they're like maybe have constipation a lot. Right, so there's different ways in which our bodies express, and then there's different herbs that work with those expressions in our bodies. So if I tended to be somebody who is really dry and dehydrated more and hot, I wouldn't want to take herbs that are very heating because it'll exacerbate my symptoms. But if I was somebody who, let's say I got sick and I had a lot of mucus and I was really like coughing and sneezing and I was having like a lot of congestion, fire cider might be really great for me because it'll help to cut that cold and that dampness, and really bring about a lot of stimulation. So does that make sense a little bit? Yeah. So if you're somebody who tends to run really hot and you get sick, I would think things that might be more soothing, like marshmallow root might be really good, or plantain. Things that are more of like a demulcent, that are more like avena, like the oats, right? They tend to be more like soothing and nourishing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you're taking, because I'm someone who's not taking herbs every day of the year, so then it's just like balancing what you've been taking and then like that moment, the acute phase, right, of the sickness or extra help.
Yeah.
Then feeling how your body, what it's needed.
Yeah, for sure. Like listen to your body. And I think that like colonialism and capitalism have taught us not to listen to our bodies, right? They've actually taught us to listen to everybody else. So listening to our bodies is really important, and knowing what your body needs. When it comes to using herbal remedies, they say it's good to take a break every once in a while so that it kind of gives your body a chance to catch up. So the way that I tend to think about this is like, when my son was taking math class, the teacher was like, he's been doing all this work and we just don't quite know like what he's going to do without all this extra like support. So then we kind of like took everything away from him, and just so he could like see where he was at. And it's the same with our bodies. If we're using herbs a lot in our bodies to kind of support, sometimes it's good just to take like a week or so off just to see how is my body reacting now, or do I need to switch up my routine? Maybe we don't. Maybe we do.
And so I have a question. You mentioned some herbs are for people who have dry body, and others are the opposite.
Yeah.
Can you recommend a good resource either in print or online?
A good resource for the energetics of herbs. Well, I guess one thing I would look into is Ayurveda has a really good system at looking at the different, they call them doshas. So the different like temperatures of the body, right? So there's pitta, kapha, and vata. So that's something that's good to look up, and there's lots and lots of literature on that. I think when it comes to like herbalism styles, there's Chinese herbalism, there's Western herbalism, there's Ayurvedic herbalism. So if you're looking at Western herbalism, I tend to like Michael Moore. He did a lot of work locally. He's got a lot of books about local New Mexico plants. He does talk about the energetics of the plants. The only thing about his books that I don't like is they don't tend to have a lot of pictures. And so there's a lot of cross-referencing that happens if you're looking to wildcraft. But if you're just wanting to learn about the herbs and their uses, he's a really good person to kind of look into.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always thirsty and my skin is always dry.
Yeah. And so, like in Ayurveda, they say like bringing in healthy fats and oils can be really good. I tend to be really dry too. So bringing in like, even like oiling our body. So you can make your own oils, and then you would want to like oil every day, like after
I
a
do
shower.
this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just edible organic oils.
Yeah, edible organic oils, and like butters, right? Like shea butters and cocoa butters and things like that. Yeah, but demulcents tend to be things that are really nourishing and like soothing to dry tissues in the body. So mallows in particular are very, very helpful. Yeah, I'm like thinking like plantains, mallows, flax, oats. You don't necessarily want to bring in a lot of things that are astringent because they're going to be more drying. Yeah. That makes sense. Cool.
Is aloe a demulcent?
Aloe, you know, it's interesting. I tend to think of aloe. Aloe juice is kind of an astringent, right? But aloe gel is, huh? Oh, just like it can be an astringent, like it can be really drying, but aloe gel is really soothing. So if you have a lot of heartburn, you can take aloe gel internally, and it helps to soothe heartburn, and it helps to soothe like the esophageal tract. Yeah, so it can kind of depend too on like the plant part. Okay, so here we are. That's a lot of talking. So let's just like close our eyes for a second and just take a deep breath. And this includes you folks at home too. So I think that like these plant friends, these plant relatives that we're working with today, they are here to support us, but it also takes us to kind of work with them as well. And so sometimes just taking a minute to take a deep breath in through our noses and breathing out through our mouth. Taking a minute to see if you can drop your shoulders away from your ears. Just taking that time and that space to really give yourself an opportunity to just be. Whatever brought you into this class, whatever you will go to after this class, for right now, in this moment, in this space, you are just here. And there's no expectations of you. So just taking a deep breath in again through your nose and out through your mouth. I want you to hold your remedy that you made in your hands and bring it to your heart. And maybe you want to whisper out loud, but maybe you want to whisper in your mind too. It's all good. Just tell your remedy what you're going to use it for. And ask your remedy to help you with that purpose. When you're ready, you can put it back down on the table. And then every day when you go to shake it up, bring that purpose back to it. And when you strain it, bring that purpose back to it. And know that like you are your own greatest healer, right? We don't have to rely on other people. Like we can start to bring that medicine into our own homes, and we can start to bring that healing into our own bodies with our own selves. So I want to just say thank you to everyone for showing up. It's been a good while since I've done a class like this, and it's been really fun. And I appreciate it. I appreciate you all being here today. Maybe we could just go around really quick and say like 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, 5 words about like what your day has been like here, or like what you're taking with you. Does that feel okay? You can say nothing too if it's nothing. Do you start?
I feel really happy to
see how the plants help us.
It's been great to be here. Thank you. That's my second workshop from that series. I think I can help myself and maybe others if they trust the remedy. Thank you.
Feel a little more grounded. Grateful for the space and for your sharing.
Thank you. I think I'm taking away really seriously, like building relationships with plants and like really thinking about being more intentional with like what they give to me, I give back to them, and like really practicing that.
First off, I guess thank you. This is wonderful. Two things that I'm instructed. One is healthy respect for plants and species, but you know, the even in this state, they still have an effect on you. And it's been interesting to start to see this. I've also been really intrigued. Maybe it's just the play of the light, people's personal choices. But everybody's oxymel is different.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to see. Whether it be the ratio of honey to vinegar, certain herbs, or like hers is almost completely in suspension. You can't see the mind. That's really dark. So it's really cool. And I guess the last part too is just sort of thinking about plants and stuff. I really love this series. But my attention bounces all over the place. But I grew up gardening, and I really was taken with this because I think in some ways that was kind of what you're talking about here. The life cycle of gardening, of farm, from seed to
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of really caring energy from the plants and from you. Thank you very much for sharing. It feels like I ended up here really serendipitously.
They were dropping me off, and I was like, "Do you guys want to come?"
Yeah, and it's like that's. I think that's how. Yeah.
do we learn something? Do we go figure the casino?
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, so thank you. It's so beautiful how you just get led where you need to be. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess similar to everyone else, with a lot of gratitude. I just, yeah, like being in community and making like something like this is also really special. So yeah, it's everyone, especially for the guidance and all the love and care that went into this. I feel like we all feel it. So, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you making this so accessible and sharing your knowledge. And thank you all for being here too and sharing your energy into creating this space. I'm really excited because I work at Whole Foods and I get school rest. I've been impatient with people, and I've been trying to find ways to stay grounded. It's been really hard. And so I just wanted to share my mantra, and that's I want to transform my anger into love. And so thank you for allowing this resource. Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Yeah, similar to what everyone shared, I feel a lot of gratitude for sharing, a lot of gratitude for space that people come together, make medicine and community. It's not something I do it in isolation, and so it's really cool to do it very circular. Yeah, so I'm just like really inspired and just like reconnected to things.
I feel the same, probably as everyone in here, and be grateful, appreciative, so thank you. And it is really nice to do this as a group, to meet everyone. And this is good for me because of the stress in my life now. And it's brought me back to my roots.
Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you to our friends on Zoom. Really appreciate you all being here. And the peach. Oh, they're talking about using peach leaf. Cool. I'm not sure where the peach conversation came in, but I'll say I love peach leaf. It's like a remedy. And specific for those folks who are working with pregnant people, it's really great for morning sickness. So peach leaf tea or peach leaf tincture. Yeah, just thank you everyone for being here. And I too love making medicine in community. It makes me feel really happy. And it's just like, and I love that too, right? Like everybody's remedy is going to be a little bit different. The ratios are different, but exactly what we need. So keep on making, and yeah, and you know, and drink it up, like use it. Don't let it just sit on a shelf, because this is now your special medicine that you made. So thank you everybody, and I'm on Instagram. I'm on Colibri Corazon is my Instagram handle. So if you're interested in future offerings, or just, I do a lot of like writing about different plants and what's happening in the garden and farm. So
Just email you.
Colibri, COLIBRI, like
Hummingbird.
yeah.
So
Thank you. Have a safe, wonderful drive home. Thank you.
I don't remember if there were sign ups already or not yet.
August. Next herbal workshop will be in August. Chastity will be doing it next, right? Yes. And what will we be doing? Do you know what
More respiratory health.
More respiratory.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Can I borrow your pen?
Yeah, so